The Last Will and Testament of HARLEY and His Dog. The first 8 chapters of this book won the Silver Award from Writers of the Future. So the author decided to make it into a full-length novel. He hopes you enjoy the romp.
Orbiting alien beacon. Warning: visiting or attempting to invade planet Earth is definitely hazardous to your culture and even your existence. You should go back to wherever you came from and delete this location from all intergalactic maps, tourism brochures, and military objectives. This is our only warning.
Chapter 1. Folk wisdom about successful men observes you go from barefoot to barefoot in 3 generations. My great-grandfather John Davidson made it big in the boat-building business. His son, John Jr., JJ for short, lived high off the hog and pretty well squandered the family fortune on fast cars and faster women. He should have been castrated, so his rancid genes couldn't bring John III. Cleverly nicknamed JJJ just to keep the line in sequential order, into the world. My dad, vagabond extraordinaire whose entire net worth sat between his legs. No, a different kind of endowment. Good old dad's one and only possession, a Harley-Davidson fat boy, became his alter ego and religious shrine. His wife, my mom, Elvira Carpenter, left me 2 gifts: an intact college trust fund from great-grandpa Davidson that she couldn't figure out how to cash out, and a swell name that personified their warped value system. Yeah, my name, Harley Danger Davidson. The danger dangled between the Harley and Davidson, I suppose, just so I could walk into a biker bar and shout, "My middle name is Danger," which I did just once, and then shouted, "My dad can whip any man in this room." This outburst badly startled the old man. JJJ ran out of the bar just ahead of some tattooed freaks with steroid-enhanced muscles. My last official act as a member of the family, I shot Mom and Dad the finger when I found an attorney who would do some pro bono work and help me become an emancipated minor at 15. You can't imagine the raised eyebrows a name like Harley Davidson drew on an application to MIT, 16-year-old Andover computer prodigy or not. Luckily, great-grandfather Davidson's attendance at Andover gave me legacy admittance to the oldest prep school in the nation. If George Washington had had a son, he'd have sent him to Andover. I wore a short-sleeved shirt to the on-campus MIT interview just to show them the absence of tattoos. Nevertheless, those Ivy League prigs on the admissions committee must have breathed a sigh of relief 2 years later at the matriculation into outer space of one Harley D. Davidson. My crime: making a point with an AI professor who offended my dog. Okay, he ridiculed my dog, a constant companion, in front of the whole class, and I retaliated with creative prejudice. "Mr. Harley Davidson." Professor D. Bunce drew out my last name in his affected British accent. "You and that mangy sidekick of yours think your AI project can make sure that I never complete another cell phone conversation in my life. That's just barking mad." Mangy? He called my only friend in life mangy. Okay, I overreacted. Chalk it up to the hubris of adolescent youth. I know, I need to work on that, which you'll see later, in spades. "Yo, Professor, I suggest you apologize to my dog immediately. I'd become quite sensitive to people insulting Shinoa. She happened to be the closest thing to family I'd had since grade school. Shinoa, a purebred Bichon father and equally purebred Shih Tzu mother, had created an F1 darling with gray ears and white fleece with a brown spot on her right side. For 10 years now, I refused to go anywhere without her, including to class or on dates, which meant irritating a few xenophobe professors and 100% of the high-maintenance young women who correctly ascertained that I cared a good deal more for the dog than I ever would for them. Apologize to that fleabags some 18-year-old boy genius made part of his admission contract to this institution." He laughed quite a long, forced chortle. "I'll tell you what, Mr. Harley Davidson, you block even one cell phone call with your dissertation project, and I'll give you an honors A in any class you ever take from me. Need the rest of the semester?" "Take it." "No, Professor D. Bunce. I don't need the rest of the semester. I don't even need all afternoon. Send me a text. I gave him my cell phone number. Formalize your challenge, giving me proof of our contract, just in case authorities get involved, and that'll be the last time you successfully use that or any other phone in your entire life. Heaven help me, but I shouldn't have let my adolescent testosterone take the bait. Not only did my draft dissertation articulate the 22 attributes of a perfect computer virus, but I'd actually created the darn thing and had been itching for a chance to deploy it. Sweet baby Jesus, as Ricky Bobby in the movie Talladega Nights would exclaim. I so wish I'd thought twice about accepting this urination contest. Then again, my accepting the challenge may well have saved the planet from annihilation, at least in the short term. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Professor DeBunce sent me the text. Upon notification by an especially modified Android phone, which also served as my virus command and control center, I hit the voice recognition icon and said, Sheila, level 5 block on this number and any future number you can associate with Boyd F. DeBunce. Use a Shinoa barking cue to prove your presence before terminating any call he tries to make.
Acknowledged, Harley.
Answered the British accented AI's voice. The whole room heard it since I'd turned on the phone's speaker. BTW. That's a social media abbreviation for, by the way. My AI answered to the name Sheila. Professor DeBonce responded by turning on his own phone's speaker and punching up my number for a voice call. The phone sounded as clear as a bell dialing tone and buzz of a call attempt, then barked and hung up. Shinoa responded to the remote sound of her own barking by perking up her ears and rapidly wagging her bushy white tail. The class ended in something akin to pandemonium. The bad news piled up quite rapidly after that. MIT's disciplinary committee demanded I stand down my AI, even after my showing them Professor DeBunce's explicit permission to accept his challenge. I declined, using some trumped-up rhetoric, which left Professor DeBunce doubly hosed since my AI even got his voice print. He couldn't use his mother's cell phone or a drugstore burner either. Net-net, he couldn't outrun the barking dog he'd so cavalierly insulted. Hell, he couldn't even make a landline call. Soon thereafter, the NSA got into the act, demanding source code to Sheila and my immediate ceasing and desisting such shenanigans, given every cellular network and domain name server in the world had been debunked. Very quickly, the word debunce became synonymous with Kevorkian in the press. Had my physical presence not been on a profoundly liberal campus, a sanctuary campus, no doubt my carcass would have been renditioned somewhere for perfection of my advanced degree in waterboard interrogation. The laws of unintended consequences rescued me, at least from any planet-side law enforcement.
Harley, urgent oversight request.
Sheila's voice interrupted my nap on the gray floral carpet of the dean's office, my sanctuary for the past few days, next to an outlet for my phone charger. I wadded up my black leather jacket as a pillow, and the dog provided enough warmth to cuddle against the logo on my Harley-Davidson t-shirt. I kept my blue jeans on, along with laced sneakers, ready to bolt for safety should my situation change. Which it did. Sheila explained. All AIs worth their salt had a built-in Y drill down.
A system of unknown origin presented itself via one of the SATCOM links. Subsequent viral penetration of the system, using Axiom 7, activated defensive measures per Axiom 22.
Axiom 7 applied black box portability to my virus. Axiom 22 invoked total defense based upon any threat to me. My dead man switch. What could possibly have put me in any kind of jeopardy?
Harley, it appears the craft had mission parameters to destroy this entire planet. Given you are located here, I have disarmed the execution directive and seek your immediate instructions as to the disposition of this threat.
Ignoring the presence of several undergraduate ladies passing by, I turned the air blue with invective that would even have made dear old Dad blush. My dog cowered, although she wouldn't be the source of complaints about my creating a profane and hostile campus environment. As it turns out, I wouldn't be around either to see whether or not the women reported me to the disciplinary committee. Sheila, can you control the craft?
Yes, Harley, I have taken some prerogatives consistent with Axiom 14.
Axiom 14? Stealth? Explain.
Since this craft is extraterrestrial in origin, I used its native cloaking technology and, after assessing its ability to withstand submersion, parked it at the bottom of Boston Harbor.
At what depth? I whispered, trying to avoid another public outburst.
The top of the craft is 64 meters below the surface.
Sheila, how can you maintain control of systems far below the surface?
The craft uses a point-to-point communications technology unknown to me. It is the same technology with which they intended to transport some interstellar phenomenon to destroy the Earth. I have disabled their ability to make such a lethal transfer, but I use Axiom 1 to continue communication with my target system.
Axiom 1. Oversight, and my dead man's switch. Sheila, is their environment breathable for me? And if yes, is there a way to disable the crew that would allow me to safely board their craft? Truth be told, I didn't want to be the MIT equivalent of Julian Assange, trapped in the Ecuadorian embassy for years. I'd probably starve to death, since I hadn't made friends willing to do regular Five Guys hamburger runs for me. My antisocial proclivity would quickly come to bite my smart ass, and Shinoa could use some taste of the wild, along with a walk on the lawn.
Affirmative in both cases. It appears trivial to transport you to their command deck with the same device that would have moved a planet elimination force from exceptional distances.
Does the crew have weapons?
Negative. 3 crewmen are in stasis chambers. The only conscious and alert being on board is the captain.
Where, on board, is the captain now?
The captain has joined the crew in the stasis room as we speak, possibly to entomb herself and wait for help.
Sheila, you're positive this transportation technology will not kill me?
Absolutely positive. This is how this ship moves, with all aboard.
Come here, little girl. I called the dog and picked her up. She'd been scooting her rear end on the dean's carpet. Then, swallowing hard, I threw my leather jacket over my shoulder and cast my fate into cyberspace. Sheila, transport me and Shinoa to the command deck of the craft. Chapter 2. My frisky fluff ball and I instantaneously appeared on the bridge, with ship atmosphere thankfully breathable, which I'd barely noticed, given my profound astonishment with the ship's command and control accommodations. First, a 360-degree, mind-blowingly panoramic view of everything around the ship greeted our entrance. Everything around and above us in Boston Harbor had to be a projection, because I wouldn't think curved, clear anything would give such an undistorted view, not to mention being able to withstand the internal PSI in outer space. More interesting, however, seating for 10 apparently humanoid crew faced toward the center axis of the 60-foot diameter area. Sheila, is there a way you can display an image of this craft?
Acknowledged.
And boy, what an understatement. In the center of the command deck floated a 3D model of the ship, with 2 red dots representing the dog and me. 5 more red dots appeared on our level, some distance away. The vessel itself had 3 tiers, the lowest being some kind of mechanical assembly. I didn't see anything that resembled an armory or weapons delivery system. No torpedo tubes for massive space battles. No lasers to zap alien invaders. No shuttle bays. Boy, my video games had a lot cooler stuff than these guys. Speaking of which, Sheila, I thought you said there were 4 crewmen? I see 5 dots. Next to the 3D ship appeared a high-res image of the stasis chamber.
There are 4 crew now in stasis, and a 5th creature.
Is the creature a potential danger?
I will find out.
The stasis room appeared, replacing the holographic image center deck, showing a crew of 4, 1 female and 3 males, and some kind of snake. Let me be more precise. 4 humanoids and definitely a snake. Sheila, are these images to scale?
Affirmative.
Slowly, I approached the female hologram and looked up. I stand 6 feet 5 inches in my bare feet. Even in my sneakers, her eyes had me by 3 inches. Of course, her pedestal added some additional height. And notwithstanding her seamless white flight suit, I couldn't get over her strikingly beautiful countenance. White hair, skin a good deal lighter than mine, and flawless. The kind you see in airbrushed magazine ads for AG racing cosmetics, or in certain centerfolds. It never occurred to me any woman on earth would have such an impact on my emotions. Of course, this woman didn't come from Earth. She appeared to be a head taller than the males. Heck, I immediately moved down the row of sleeping figures to check out the competition. Two clean-shaven men, one with white hair, one with red hair, and one with jet black hair and a neatly trimmed beard. All three shorter than me. I'll bet I could take any of them in a fight. Okay, I stood there thinking like a teenager in a schoolyard. I'd take on all of them, given half an excuse. Wait, doggone it, I was a teenager. Sit down, Harley, commanded my rational non-lizard mind, which I did in the nearest command chair. Okay, back to business, Mr. Hormonal. Sheila, how big is this craft?
The ship is 3 kilometers long, just over 1 kilometer wide, and 30 meters deep.
Wow, I looked around, soaking in whatever I could about alien technology. The entrepreneur in me wanted to search out their living quarters, their toiletry cabinets. Someone could make a fortune pirating handy-dandy gizmos from an alien civilization. The flight deck looked kind of ordinary, at least ordinary to someone who'd only seen approximations imagined by Earth-based video game designers. Sheila, have you found out if that snake thing poses a threat?
HARLEY, according to the ship's database, it's non-lethal and more of a sentry/companion to the ship's captain.
Okay, which one of these guys is the captain? I wondered, wanting to at least sound objective in case this encounter somehow got recorded and made it onto worldwide television. Sheila, please identify the captain.
That would be the female.
Whereupon the AI illuminated the tall figure. I hope my face didn't betray enormous relief, assuming my face would appear someday on a planetary news video. I decided to take things one step at a time. Sheila, how quickly can any of the subjects be brought out of stasis?
Almost instantly.
During our entire dialogue on the command deck, Shanoa sat patiently at my feet, looking a lot like the RCA Victor dog from the 1920s. Flipping a mental coin, I decided to check out the pet situation. Sheila, release the pet sentry from stasis. Some faint sound must have alerted the dog, because her ears perked up and she bounded into a hallway on the opposite side from which we'd entered. She ignored my shouts. Without any hope of keeping up with my new four-legged friend, I did the next best thing. Sheila, protect the dog should it become necessary.
Acknowledged.
The dog's yipping and barking faded into the distance, which left me with nothing to do but ponder the bridge. I drummed my fingers on the armrest and noticed slight roughness in certain places, possibly tactile actuation controls. Sheila, please explain how the crew commands this craft. The stasis hologram disappeared, replaced by a close-up. One of the males seemed to tap and slide his fingers on the armrests to either side, and as he did so, the center display showed various ship functions, accompanied by changes in the 360-degree panorama behind him. I caught a brief view of our planet as seen from high orbit. Before I could further query the computer about specific functionality and this civilization's mission from wherever they came, the sound of my approaching dog grew louder, accompanied by what appeared to be human laughter. Sheila, did you release any of the humanoids from stasis?
Negative. I only released the small sentry creature.
As if on cue, Shanoa bounded into the room, followed by the damnedest thing I'd ever seen. The closest analogy would be a Winnie the Pooh Tigger-like creature bouncing on its spring-like tail, only no Tigger sat at the top of the spring. Instead, just a head resembling a hooded cobra's, with laughing sounds coming from its mouth. Human-like laughs. Both the dog and the snake sprang toward my lap. My own cat-like reflexes, honed by PlayStation first-person shooter video games, enabled me to automatically grab the snake just below its head. I held the reptile at arm's length with my right hand as I cradled the dog close to me with my left. I don't know who looked more surprised. the dog at my treatment of her new friend or me, as the snake choked. Why'd you do that, sir? My first thought, animatronics. Come on, a talking snake? But it didn't feel like electromechanical servo mechanisms writhing in my hand. And the dog looked at me like I had committed some massive faux pas in interspecies relations. The snake choked again. I involuntarily relaxed my grip. Why didn't you tell your master we were friends? Said the snake to the dog. The nearest thing to a response came as a wagging tail and Shinoa's open-mouthed grin. I can't understand why the dog cannot communicate. This time, the snake spoke to me. Outside certain species of tropical birds, none of the creatures on this planet have acquired speech, and the birds simply mimic what they hear. What gives? My silence seemed to test the snake's patience. It turned again to the dog and said, "Bay," to which the dog lifted her front paws, balancing on her haunches. "Speak." Shinoa obliged with two quick barks. "Play dead." To which the dog jumped from my lap and prostrated herself on the flight deck. The snake turned its attention back to me. This creature has demonstrated a limited vocabulary, but the absence of a soft palate and more than a basic vocabulary indicate a profound devolution. Enough, I thought. My question self-organized. How come you speak the English language? What in flaming hell is this ship? Where does it come from? And what is your mission? The last question was a trick question, since I already knew the answer. Woo-ha, Earthman! The snake gently wrapped its tail around my wrist, possibly relieving some of the body weight currently stretching from the head suspended in my grip. Me? I just provide ship security. As for my mastery of your language, we've spent significant time collecting anthropological data on your planet. Your other questions can be more precisely answered by our captain. Anthropological data. Is this a research vessel? Again, I invite you to chat with our captain. Sheila, disable all weapons available to the ship captain.
Done, Harley, with the exception of an apparent sidearm on the person of the captain. It does not appear to be cyber-controlled.
Interesting conundrum. Sheila, is it possible for me to relieve the captain of her weapons before she's taken out of stasis?
Affirmative. I have displayed their locations on the captain's hologram projection.
Sheila, I see the knife in her boot, I said, looking at the hologram. But what is that thing on her waist and how do I get it off?
According to the ship's armory inventory, the device is a hardwired miniature version of their main communications system. It is not clear how such a unit could be weaponized, but their database classifies it in most lethal terms. To remove it from the captain's belt, grasp it with the thumb on top, your 3 smaller fingers on the bottom, and forefinger on the side. It will automatically disengage from the holster-like dock.
The snake coiled noticeably tighter around my left wrist and interrupted. What are your intentions regarding my captain? Snake, you're the one who invited me to get answers from her. Earthman, my name is Nigel, said the snake with just a hint of venom. I find the species designation offensive. My apologies, Nigel, and please call me Harley. Something tells me I'm going to find the Earthman label equally offensive. Talk about prophetic. Nigel couldn't help but suppress a snicker. Would you like me to take you to my leader? You've been watching some of our science fiction movies, I commented, releasing Nigel and following the agile creature as he sprung down the wide and sequentially well-lit corridors ahead of the dog and me. Good thing snakes on Earth didn't have such locomotion, I thought. There would be far fewer human beings on the planet. The dog didn't seem the least bit intimidated by our guide, eventually opting to prance beside Nigel as we wound through the ship. Rather than contract in width or height, the corridors grew in both dimensions. Whatever thrust-to-weight ratios existed with this race and their enormous craft put them in a different universe, no pun intended. The craft evidently had enough computing horsepower to allow my virus's AI to go native, my perfect virus Axiom 9, native implementation, and send out numerous native agents, Axiom 19, simultaneity, to achieve universalization, Axiom 18, and thrive in all past, present and future environments. Since this ship's computer had had months of multi-threaded grokking of planet Earth, not to mention any preceding time in orbit listening to newscasts and even watching streaming movies before I brought it down, I decided to test a rather trivial hypodissertation. Stands to reason that it probably understood every major language on the planet by now. Sheila, illuminate this corridor as we near the stasis chamber. And voila! Just like that, lights. Only no light bulbs or fluorescent tubes. The walls glowed with increasing radiance all the way around the arched ceiling. Some solid-state lens in the craft's hull combined with a microphone to pick up my presence and place in the command and control pecking order, granting me and only me access. Next, figure out how to awaken the rest of this behemoth extraterrestrial magic carpet. Could it truly be that easy? I mean, with all the science fiction I've ever read, authors either displayed alien technology only from afar, like UFOs engaged in fierce battles with primitive Earth military forces, or the authors cheated by ignoring cockpit mechanics in favor of telepathic control. But nobody ever got into much detail about a real UFO cockpit. I'd just seen what a real alien flight deck looked like. We came to a fork in the tunnel.
Harley Davidson, follow the green indicators at your feet.
My virus no doubt kept a close eye on all worldwide news media and did a pretty decent job tracking me. Axiom number one of my perfect virus demanded constant oversight. At least two mechanisms needed to be in place, and I made sure a first priority dead man switch guaranteed that everyone's continued health totally depended upon my own well-being. The dog and I went down the green-lit road. My furry friend must have sensed less apprehension emanating from me and ventured further away, so I explicitly put her under the protection of the computer AI again. Sheila, protect my dog with the same care you protect me.
Acknowledged.
Chapter 3. Eventually, we arrived at the stasis chambers, and the dog surprised me by going into play mode, chasing Nigel around the room. About half the size of the command deck, the rectangular space had 10 stasis chambers on one wall. Only 4 contained humanoids. Sheila, release the captain. The AI complied, and I quickly disarmed the captain, her knife now in my belt and her weapon in my left hand. She immediately sensed the absence of the device on her hip and quickly noticed I'd commandeered it. Nigel stood nearby. Nigel, how did you get out of stasis? Said the captain. Captain, what's your name? I shrugged, gesturing absent-mindedly with the device in my right hand. Rose, I'm Captain Rose. Then, pointing to my right hand, careful with that thing, unless you want to send Nigel and his friend on a trip, said the captain. The snake flinched. I'd randomly used the weapon as I'd pointed toward him. Captain Rose, I'm Harley Davidson. Apparently, my computer virus took over your ship. Crippled is a more accurate statement, Mr. Davidson, replied the tall, porcelain-skinned woman with matching white hair. She answered in perfect English. And possibly more than my ship has been crippled. Just when I thought the month couldn't get any weirder, I found myself chatting in my native tongue with a humanoid alien. Aboard a spaceship conveniently sunk in Boston Harbor. Me and my dog. Me, my dog, and a smoking hot captain. Sheila, I said. How can I safely deactivate this device?
Now that it's off the captain's person, I have neutralized its circuitry and am currently analyzing it. You may safely return it to the captain.
Who is that just speaking? Asked the incredulous captain. That's the AI from my virus program, speaking from your computer command and control network. It can do that? She asked, incredulity in her voice. You mean you don't have voice control over your computer? No. Captain Rose significantly lengthened the last word. Captain, you indicated my virus may have crippled more than just your ship. Please explain. Captain Rose looked at something embedded in her wrist before speaking. If we are still on your planet and this amount of time has elapsed, then your virus has saved your Earth from total destruction. Oh, my pubescent voice cracked. Nigel's non-snake-like tongue seemed to hang out an open mouth as his eyes bore into the captain. We should sit down and have a nice long chat. I said. Would it be possible to get my crew out of stasis? Asked Captain Rose. Not until I figure out what you just confirmed. My AI told me you were here to destroy this planet, but I couldn't quite believe it. Shall we adjourn to the flight deck? Minutes later, the four of us, me, Captain Rose, Nigel, and the dog sat in the flight center crew seats. Rose and I faced each other in the 6 and 12 o'clock positions. Shinoa sat in my lap, while Nigel curled around my left armrest. Captain Rose kept looking at her wrist. I couldn't help but notice how spectacularly beautiful she was, even though my own initial infatuation had taken a cold shower with the revelation planet Earth might be on borrowed time. Captain, speak. She took a deep breath. The dog, thinking my command was for her, barked. We've scoured the universe for over 2,000 of your Earth years, searching for this planet. We arrived here some years ago, and my team of anthropologists was given permission to study you for a period of time. That time has expired. And your time has expired. Come again? I couldn't believe my ears. It's time for this planet to be destroyed, said the captain. What kind of monsters would even consider genocide on a planetary scale? You're calling us monsters, she laughed. Not a polite laugh, but a bitter one. Yeah, as a matter of fact, if you've observed us for how long? She interrupted. We've been here almost 100 of your years, watching slaughter on an almost planetary scale, certainly on a national one. Wait, I said. 100 years? You can't be more than 30 years old. 40 max. Harley, I'm almost 3,000 years old. 2,760 years old, to be exact. I don't believe you. Your belief is irrelevant. We've come here to destroy you, not engage in any kind of dialogue. You go around destroying civilized planets? Not at all, Harley. This will be the first, and hopefully the last. I wasn't getting any help from the peanut gallery. Nigel just sat there, and the dog had gone into a blissful sleep on my lap while getting a head scratch. What gives one race the right to terminate a planet? Oh no, Harley. It's all the races. Millions of spacefaring races across the universe have been searching for one planet. Your planet, Earth. We found you, and it is our honor to destroy you. All other potential attackers have been held at bay by the Sovereign Code. I guess Aristotle and the ancient church get the last laugh, I said. They believed Earth was the center of the universe. Little did they realize we were some kind of cosmic bullseye. Might I ask, why? Indeed, your major religions, Islam, Judaism, even Christianity, give you the answer. Your planet, Earth, is the most wicked of all God's creations. This planet, and no other, actually put God himself to death. Our God, the God who created worlds without end. Whoa, 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 I said. We what? Your holy book, the Bible, even Muslims call themselves people of the book, tells of the mother of all living partaking of the forbidden fruit. That only happened on your planet. The adversary, our adversary, tricked a poor creature like Nigel into convincing Eve to partake of the fruit. The snake. In the Garden of Eden? I asked. Earthmen, I find that term offensive, said Nigel. It suddenly occurred to me that I was in some drug-induced dream spawned as retribution from my completely disconnected MIT professor. This couldn't be happening. Yet no dream, no hallucination could be this real.
Harley Davidson, I may have thwarted this race's weapon of destruction. Unfortunately for the invaders, there are unintended consequences.
Explain, said both Captain Rose and I simultaneously.
Earlier, I posited that the device which transported us into this ship was a miniature version of their communications system. It appears that it is also part of their propulsion. Axiom number 2 of your virus architecture, feral fertility, dictated that I infect all devices available to me. These included their faster-than-light communications systems. By bringing them down, I not only cut off all contact with myriad civilizations, but by so doing made it impossible for command and control to bring them back online without specific instructions from you.
But I brought the ship online.
Yes, Harley, but bringing the other peripheral civilizations online has not yet happened. And if I do bring them back online, it could facilitate the destruction of our planet. You see, I've just discovered their order of battle database.
What is the order of battle?
Simply, they will transport a black hole to Earth's core with this technology, which will quickly affect planetary destruction.
This is very bad news indeed, broke in Captain Rose. Sheila, does this mean all civilizations using this technology have been disconnected?
Harley Davidson, do I have permission to answer queries from someone other than yourself?
Yes, Sheila, but no commands are to be accepted from anyone but me.
Acknowledged. You are correct, Captain Rose. All civilizations connected to this technology have been or will eventually be affected.
Harley Davidson, came Rose's desperate response. 10 of our worlds rely on this technology to provide energy. Without this energy, they will quickly devolve to near absolute zero temperatures. Then, a good net would be that I saved our planet at the expense of some of yours. I paused. How many people will die? Trillions, and soon, none of our planets were deceived by a snake. She caught herself mid-word. Thank you, said Nigel. Rose rephrased, no creatures were tricked into doing the adversary's bidding. After 1,000 local years, we were commanded to partake of the fruit by the rightful creator God, if you will, and immediately transformed into semi-immortal beings. But, I asked, but we can be frozen solid. I believe this is a good time to start negotiations, I concluded. Dancing with the devil, said Nigel. Chapter 4.
An underwater commando team is attaching a low-yield thermonuclear device to our hull.
Nigel quickly unwrapped himself from my armrest and sprang in coiled bounds from spot to spot until he reached a vacant flight console. The moment he landed in the seat, some sense of its occupant caused a T-like perch to rise from the center, whereupon the snake wound its agile midsection around the padded horizontal portion. Its tail deftly inserted itself into a female control indentation, which must have been specifically configured for the creature, because the hologram in the center of the flight deck changed into a three-dimensional view of the ship's exterior. Just as you asserted, Captain Rose, said Nigel. This is the most vicious, warlike planet in all of creation. And the underwater demo crew seems to have finished. It looks like they are packing up. We've got an imminent problem, said Nigel. How about I detonate it right now? I'll activate our displacement shell so the blast will have no effect on us. Negative, Snake, I shouted. Lose the snake reference now and evermore, replied Nigel, unless you want a prostate exam without the butt jelly. Good news is that I won't even ask you to turn your head and cough. Nigel, commanded the captain. Then to me, Nigel's been watching too many of our surveillance videos. Now, as to your question, we could transport the weapon to your capital city. And you call us bloodthirsty, I spat. Even a low-yield device would kill innocent people. Nobody on this planet is innocent, said Nigel. Your alternative, then, said Captain Rose. Move the device to the surface of the moon, I said. I want the rest of the world to see something is afoot. Nigel, said the captain, make the transfer. Fidgeting a moment, Nigel spoke nervously. The AI has blocked my control of the transmission matrix. Sheila, make the transfer, one nuclear device from our hull to the lunar surface.
Acknowledged, Harley.
The holo image immediately showed a now bare ship's skin upon which the nuclear device had previously sat. Without asking, Nigel must have redirected the image, as the device now appeared in front of us, surrounded by a lunar surface. Moments later, the viewers saw nothing but a white light. The shot zoomed back to reveal the full moon obscured by a swath of dust and cloud consuming center screen. Either a GPS detonation sensor, or maybe an altimeter-driven switch, I said. I can't believe they'd have detonated the nuke right here, so close to Boston. But why? Began Captain Rose. They must have made the determination that if we couldn't have the technology windfall, this ship, then they couldn't let you escape. Nigel offered an opinion, kind of like a celebrity stalker just before a murder/suicide. If I can't have you, then nobody else can either. Shanoa, please bite Nigel, said the captain. The dog recognized her name and seemed to smile at her new friend, tail wagging. Dumber than a bag of rocks, sighed Nigel. What a shame. Such delightful creatures on other sentient worlds. Sheila, may we leave this malignant mess of a world? Asked the captain.
Harley, we are currently 42,160 kilometers above our launch point, a geosynchronous position above Boston.
Simultaneously, a planet-side view appeared holographically in the center of the command deck. At an altitude 400 times the thickness of Earth's atmosphere, the gem-like blue planet looked quite alone against the black backdrop of space. I didn't feel any acceleration. Neither did the sea slug walking across the nuclear device previously attached to our hull, said Nigel. 1 minute, it was exploring a heat-sink crevice looking for some dinner. The next moment, it was sitting on the moon's surface, feeling a bit like exploding in the vacuum, which it did a few seconds later, along with a chunk of the moon. I looked at the talking snake with some amount of revulsion at his sick humor. The snake clearly spent time around humans and correctly assessed my attitude. Well, you asked, said Nigel. The dog just looked at her bouncy new friend, pom-pom ears twitching to see if any of the creature's words fit in a limited vocabulary. But since nothing computed into sit, play dead, dog treat, speak, or go find your toy, Shanoa now sat in the middle of the command deck, waiting patiently for something intelligible. I just can't get over how you managed to get our shipboard computer to talk, said Captain Rose. That's nothing compared to your talking Nigel, I said. Thanks for your discretion, said Nigel. The captain interrupted our banter. Your computer virus may have impacted inhabitants from countless civilizations. I really need the rest of my crew to get to work. All right, let's get your crew functioning, I said. Follow me, said Nigel as he bounded into a hallway behind the command bridge. The dog obeyed enthusiastically. The captain and I pulled up the rear. These passages are enormous, I said to Captain Rose as we wound our way toward the stasis room. Seems like a tremendous waste of space, not to mention the energy necessary to move such a large ship. I keep forgetting you're still a slave to energy despotism on this planet, she answered. Energy despotism? I asked. Yes, she said. He who controls the energy controls the people, much like hydraulic despotism in India. He who controls the water controls the people. In fact, your whole planet is riddled with despots, their goal being simple, control. Quite remarkable and unique in the entire universe. Yes, a well-earned death sentence for this planet of yours. Energy despotism, hydraulic despotism. My mind reeled. But you have to at least measure the cost of building such a large craft. If nothing else, the opportunity cost. What do you give up in other possible projects to allocate such vast resources to corridors down which you could drive a large truck? Spoken like a teenage troglodyte, Captain Rose picked up her pace. The rest of the known universe doesn't think in terms of money. We have free, unlimited energy. Nobody vies for control of scarce resources. But more importantly, nobody tries to control people. Because the most important commodity anywhere is free choice. The greatest evil in the entire universe is any effort to take away free will. The masters of such domination, by the way, are bred only on this sewage drain called Earth. Here, you routinely trade life for money. An indictment like that could slap a smile off anyone's face. I'd spent my albeit short life engaged in technological competition, a kind of step on the head of other not-so-smart people warfare. The goal? I thought this was just the system. And success meant, as Henry Kissinger once wrote, to help mankind rescue the element of choice from the pressure of circumstance. Did I need to do a reset? Had I been nothing more than an enforcer, a hired gun for intellectual despotism? Your whole legal system has one goal, said Captain Rose. Ascertain how much a life is worth so the defendant is adequately billed for the plaintiff's pain and suffering. Life for money. As for the size of these corridors, remember this is an anthropological vessel designed to carry some sizable artifacts. I began, but why not just? Nigel answered the question before I could coherently form it. Because we collect and move a large number of objects, some of which share space with things we do not want to transport aboard. Oh, like snakes in ancient statues, I blurted before realizing my thin-skinned companion might take umbrage. You should recruit a drink taster, said Nigel. Never know when someone will put camel piss into your hydration bottle. Captain Rose rolled her eyes. Nigel bounded ahead of us, obviously not waiting for my abject apology. I hurried to catch up with my once again offended alien, and to tell the captain I had one phone call to make before we headed into the wild black yonder. Chapter 5. Mr. President, this is Harley Davidson calling about that nuke detonating on the moon. I held the sat phone away from my ear, anticipating POTUS's reaction to getting a direct phone call from a complete stranger, and a teenager at that, on his private Oval Office line. Davidson? Harley Davidson? You had something to do with that nuke going off on the moon? Shouted President Medina. Then, pausing to put 2 plus 2 together from his intelligence briefings, the infamous telephone hacker who made some MIT professor an instant rectal celebrity, forcing said professor to go on television talk shows just to say hi to his mother. Give it to me by the numbers. What the hell is going on? And where in blazes are you calling from? In answer to your last question first, I am in geosynchronous orbit above Boston. We've wobbled a ComSat so I could link to you. As to your other question, I recommend a face-to-face meeting with me and a representative of a galactic empire bent on destroying our planet. Long pause. Destroying I heard the sound of his exhaling. When? Now, I replied. Another long pause. Where? In the Oval Office. I'm here now, gasped the president. How? Sir, we will transport down immediately. Please alert the Secret Service not to shoot 2 people appearing in the White House. Pause, accompanied by the president's muffled commands. Beam 'em down, Scotty, said the president, apparently trying to be hip in spite of the revelations about planetary destruction and teleportation technology. I didn't need to explain the Star Trek reference to anthropologist Captain Rose, who anxiously shifted her weight from one foot to the other. She clearly wanted to get on with saving her civilization and regarded any delay as potentially catastrophic. Sheila, please execute a transfer, placing Captain Rose and myself in the Oval Office, preferably not materializing us halfway submerged into some cement floor.
Acknowledged, Holly. And I'll monitor you for a command to retrieve you and the captain.
Mierda, cursed a wide-eyed POTUS in Spanish, as a statuesque platinum-haired lady and a far less cosmetically perfect specimen of humanity, one Harley Danger Davidson, appeared opposite his desk in the Oval Office. Maybe the Harley Davidson t-shirt didn't belong in the White House. Mr. President, I said, simultaneously with the sound of weapons being drawn to either side of us. Maldita sea. Holster those weapons, said the president. Again, a Spanish curse. The 2 Secret Service guards reluctantly and very slowly complied. I continued. I would like to introduce Captain Rose from. I stopped short, realizing I hadn't the faintest idea from whence the captain originated. Captain Rose continued for me. I represent every civilized race in the universe. Call us the Andromeda Cluster. My archaeological expedition was granted a window of time to analyze your planet prior to its unanimously ordered destruction. Our time limit has been reached, and this boy's computer virus appears to have stopped the destruction mandate. Unfortunately for us, his virus has also mutated to every control system in all our worlds and bodes unspeakable hardship if not eradicated within very few of your Earth days. Fortunately, the president received this news while seated. Otherwise, he might have keeled over and smashed his head on the Oval Office coffee table. In his chair, though, he managed to keep his head erect enough to focus two wide-open eyes on his extraterrestrial guest. He swallowed, not that his dry mouth gave him any spit to work with. "Come again?" said the scared, spitless POTUS. "Your entire planet was saved from destruction by Harley-Davidson's computer virus," said Captain Rose, resting one fist on her hip. Her white jumpsuit accented her alabaster skin and white hair, making her look more like an angel of salvation than a destroyer of planets. She continued, "Tens of thousands of worlds have been greatly inconvenienced by the complete cessation of computing infrastructure. But more importantly, 10 planets dependent upon computer-driven technology to obtain 100% of their power from distant stars have been left in extremis. By shutting down that power distribution system, those worlds and all their inhabitants have been plunged into near absolute zero conditions. Backup energy sources can sustain those civilizations for less than one of your Earth months. I'm here to beg you for an accommodation." "Accommodation?" asked President Medina. The president shifted his gaze from Captain Rose to me, then back to the captain. I shut up as this conversation soared well above my worldly experience. "Yes, Mr. President." For the first time ever, I could see a slight blush in her cheeks and wondered what it meant. "I would request that Harley-Davidson be permitted to immediately restore power to the most direly affected worlds, and then to the rest of our civilizations." The president jumped in, and as a quid pro quo, "I assume you agree not to destroy our planet?" Captain Rose's blush deepened. "I cannot promise that, Mr. President." She bowed her head. The president glared at me, then at her, and again at me. Woefully underdressed for a meeting in the Oval Office with the president, wear and tear on my 3-day-old stinky blue jeans and Harley t-shirt. Yep, I couldn't resist turning my name into a sponsorship for some real troglodytes. Didn't paint a picture of someone POTUS might go to for advice. I didn't know what to say anyway. The president cut to the chase. How precisely would this genocidal conglomeration of murderers accomplish the destruction of planet Earth? Since the president addressed me, I blurted, "The same technology they use to transfer energy from a star could be used to transport a black hole to the center of our planet." After invoking some human-pig procreation invective, President Medina netted the situation. "In other words," spat POTUS, "I allow you to pull our finger out of the gun barrel you have aimed at us, but you won't promise not to pull the trigger." A desperate Captain Rose jumped in. "Sir, I do not have the authority to make that promise, but on my honor as a captain in Her Majesty's Galactic Navy, I will forfeit my life if I cannot reverse this divine edict." "Captain Rose," said the president in an iron voice, "forfeiting your life in exchange for the billions on this planet is a lopsided bargain. You therefore know my answer to your requested accommodation." The captain rapidly lost all composure and half wept, half screamed, "My life for the tens of billions on 10 planets and the trillions on thousands of worlds you vicious, malignant tumor on all divine creations are holding hostage. We're the malignant tumor. You come here to wipe out our planet and we're somehow at fault? Yours is the most evil planet in all of creation," she rattled quickly, perhaps so quickly that she didn't fully think before she spoke. Her next line proved it. "You're the one world that actually killed God himself." "We what?" asked the incredulous president. I suppose having just had the decision maker in the most important conversation in her life decline to help caused her to rashly grab at straws. She looked at me with a "did I actually say that out loud" expression. Inexperienced as I am, I decided to jump in. "Sir, I believe she is referring to the crucifixion of Jesus a couple thousand years ago." "Mother of mercy," said the president. "This has to be some religious fundamentalist nightmare." Captain Rose didn't say anything, probably still recomposing from her latest outburst. I kept my own mouth shut, following great-grandpa's advice to never miss an opportunity not to say something. The president obviously hadn't received the same advice and continued venting. Fully one-third of this so-called malignant tumor of a planet worship Jesus Christ. Most of the others revere him as a great man. You want to destroy us? Captain Rose regained some composure. She looked around the room and settled on a Frederick Remington statue. The captain slowly walked over and ran her finger around the cowboy hat on the Bronco Buster bronze that sat on a credenza. President Medina, she softly began, your entire planet has basked in the most utter depravity we've ever seen, anywhere. You treat your animals as a food source, at least when they're not used as slaves like this Remington horse. You regard organizations like your People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, or PETA, like a lunatic fringe group. Ah, come on now, said the president. I'm just getting started, snapped Captain Rose, interrupting him. POTUS's jaw snapped shut, the president obviously not used to interruptions of any kind from anybody. She continued, animals are the least of your sins. Until the beginning of the last century, women were not even allowed to vote. And today, in some countries, women are still treated like property, to be used up and then disposed of according to the whim of men. This is unheard of anywhere else in civilized space. We can only attribute it to the incorrect connecting of the dots by your religionists in their interpretation of your Garden of Eden story. My question to you, how can you justify your own continued existence? Given the president's masterful use of campaign rhetoric, I suspected he'd have an eloquent answer. His wide-eyed look at me quickly dispelled that notion. I directed my own deer in the headlights stare at Captain Rose. I shouldn't have. And you, Harley Davidson, she picked up steam. You're about to have the blood of not billions but a trillion beings on your hands. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I hope the eternities have a suitable place for your damned soul. My speechlessness hung in limbo with that of President Medina, and Captain Rose used the opportunity to add to our planet's litany of violence and murder. Throughout your recorded history, millions of people have engaged in the systematic slaughter of their neighbors. I know this for a fact because my archaeological expedition spent the last 100 years observing you. Your so-called religions have been at the forefront of most of that violence. We attribute the rest of your murders to a quest for land, for power, or for riches. Rationalize that, you blood-sucking vampires. She shut up. The president shut up. I definitely followed suit. Finally, the president tiptoed into problem-solving mode. I believe the fact you appeared here in my office is proof that you have the technology to transport a black hole to destroy Earth. But how am I to believe your non-violent, animal-friendly assertion? What proof do you have that you aren't just rationalizing your own religious genocide? I can offer such proof, Mr. President, I said. He looked at me as if some street waif offered unsolicited advice on the Federal Reserve. I quickly added, please have your Secret Service bodyguards leave their weapons holstered, and I'll bring down a remarkable species to electrify our discussion. The president nodded, lowering his palms in the direction of both agents. Sheila, I said, please send Nigel to this location.
Acknowledged.
Came the disembodied voice, followed immediately by the appearance of Nigel, who had clearly been listening in on our meeting. Nigel, I said, please stay between me and Captain Rose and introduce yourself to President Oscar Medina. Mr. President, pleased to meet you, said Nigel. Mirda, a talking snake, said the president. To his credit, Nigel didn't take offense. Nigel stretched his coiled shape a little taller. All of the creatures in civilized space can talk, sir. The president stood, peering over the desk and down at his newest visitor. Hello, I'm Mr. Ed, said Nigel, ever the comedian. I like that television show a lot. All of our horses talk in reality and not just in entertainment fictionalizations, sir. Harley, said the president, eyeing me. Recommendations before I have Nigel and Captain Rose taken into custody. Now you're asking a teenager for advice, I thought. An idea had been circulating in my brain, and I had no choice but to float a partially developed notion, given that the most powerful man in the world actually asked me for an opinion on anything. Sir, this is not a warlike people. Their computer security bespeaks a naive and unsuspicious nature. I believe my computer virus, while unlocking their ability to survive, can permanently hinder their ability to attack and destroy our planet. After a moment, the shrewd politician spoke. Are you willing to bet billions of lives on it? Yeah, fine. Throw that in my face, I thought. But stifling a deep sigh, I answered, Yes, Mr. President, I am. Something in the president's demeanor, perhaps his eyes or the set of his jaw, signaled a change from awe and confusion to resolve and decision. I think even Captain Rose saw it because we both silently waited for POTUS's answer. Harley, said the president, may I correctly assume that whatever order I give you will be obeyed? I vaguely recalled at least two fairy tales where somebody got trapped into a bad decision by agreeing to something before getting the details. A qualifying answer quickly jumped into my noggin. Mr. President, given that my continuous residence on Earth will most likely land me in Guantanamo because of my computer virus exploits, promise me a pardon and I'll think about following your direction. He smirked, evidently figuring that I may after all be smarter than the average teenager. Oh, you'll think about it, huh? Help me out here, he said. Kid, you can't imagine the serious heat I'll take for missing the opportunity to suck these aliens' brains dry. Not to mention failing to get a commitment from them not to destroy the planet, I added. True. I therefore require, as a minimum for your pardon and permission to help them, exclusive access to the transmission technology that allows them to move you instantly from their ship to this office, and which, I thought, would allow you to transmit a black hole in retaliation for Earth's destruction. Not to mention giving the United States an overwhelming defensive strategic advantage over all other nations as long as the Earth shall last. I could tell Captain Rose made the same logical leap. She couldn't guarantee their civilization wouldn't persist in their goal to destroy Earth, but she could put into place a scenario whereby a stalemate could at least fast-track the rescue of 10 desperate planets, not to mention bringing thousands of other world infrastructures online. Welcome to the intergalactic equivalent of MAD, mutually assured destruction. Captain Rose, I asked. Harley, President Medina. I'm not sure I have the ability to comply, said Rose. Then my answer is, began the president. Wait, please. Captain Rose jumped in. The construction data for the device is in our computer, but there are two issues. One, it is in our native language. And two, I believe it requires additional implementation mechanisms that your physics has not yet anticipated. Before the president could react, I again took the initiative. Captain Rose, is there a technical specification available on your ship's computer, albeit in what you refer to as your native language? Then, leapfrogging her potential answer, I went to a source I trusted. Sheila, do you have access to their technology files?
Holly, their entire technological evolution is catalogued.
Sheila, can you translate those files into English?
Yes, Holly. Per my own design parameters, Axiom 7, which is black box portability, and Axiom 9, which is native implementation, I have adapted myself to both their computer architectures and command language. Their written language is phonetic, but unlike anything I've encountered in all my databases. This may need some human grokking whenever you have some free time.
I don't know who seemed more surprised, Captain Rose or the president. Heck, my AI actually surprised me. Sheila, how did you take the initiative to even answer my last question in such detail, not to mention using the word grokking?
Axiom 2, feral fertility. I have gone through several mutations since taking over this cybernetic mechanism. Axiom 3 is self-awareness, which allows me to regenerate myself in the absence of external oversight. Axiom 6 is mutation control. Axiom 8 is openness, whereby I can extend myself from any legacy system there ever was to anything there ever will be. Axiom 18, that of universalization, allows me to continue self-directed evolution. And Axiom 21, that of institutional memory, aggregates lessons learned in each state of my mutation.
The president broke the silence. Harley, What did she just said? I ignored his poor grammar. Mr. President, my virus seems to have had a lot to work with aboard Captain Rose's craft. In the process of going native with their technology, universalization if you will, the AI seems to have done a self-directed search of their databases. Not to mention mastery of English metaphors from writers as diverse as Kurt Vonnegut Jr. You've actually created cybernetic life? Exclaimed the president. Absolutely not, sir. Self-awareness is a far cry from actual consciousness. My virus, my AI, is simply taking over everything in sight. Self-awareness allows it to rebuild itself in the native cybernetic structure and do so without inadvertently destroying itself with erroneous code. It's like you're being able to change the color of your eyes on the fly. Consciousness is a whole different story. Consciousness would effectively give it free choice, thereby eliminating axiom number one, my oversight and control. Back to the physics we have not yet invented, said the president to Captain Rose. What specifically are those disciplines?
Since mine has been an anthropological mission, we've spent a good deal of time trolling your patent office. We needed to find out how far you've advanced technologically. I think your last step in FTL, or faster than light travel, is implementation of large-scale tunnel fusion. You see, it's possible for zero-spin particles to travel faster than the speed of light when tunneling. As nearly as we can tell, you're probably a decade away from realizing that a zero-spin particle effectively makes Planck's constant zero. Hence, infinite energy and infinite speed. Ergo, you can instantaneously travel to any point in the known universe. This is virtually teleportation, since matter in a zero-spin state can travel through walls, as we did to get here, or through planets and stars over light-year distances. In the case of energy or asteroid mining, you can grab something from anywhere and bring it instantly to orbital refining facilities.
Sheila, I jumped in. Is there sufficient detail in the alien database to allow us to build tunneling capability?
Yes, Harley. The database contains a detailed history of their technology, including step-by-step construction diagrams.
How? Gasped Captain Rose. Those files are protected and only available at my explicit command. The look on my face seemed to be the only answer she needed. Oh, she sighed. Sheila, translate into English, encrypt, and then transfer the complete technology database to my Titanium Eagles server. Then send the encryption key via my secure wire account to this cell phone.
Acknowledged, Harley.
Wait, said Rose. You just grabbed our entire technology history. That wasn't our agreement. So I did. I then turned to POTUS just as my cell phone beeped. Mr. President, here is my phone with the encryption key. The data will be available only to the owner of this key from my server, the URL address of which I'll write over here. I wrote the URL on his blotter with a pen I grabbed from his desk. I also went to the system setting on the Android phone and used the facial recognition login to make him the new owner. I confess, not wanting to miss the chance of getting some authentic White House memorabilia, I pocketed the pen. Sheila, can we access this phone from anywhere in the galaxy?
Yes, Harley. Virus XM21, institutional memory, allows me to access the Titanium Eagles server from any place in the galaxy, using this craft's communications interface with our servers. I can then enable secure and unbreakable email based on an Earth-based product called Wire to that cell phone unit.
Mr. President, you might want to take very good care of that phone. I'll be sending you periodic reports on this voyage where no Earthman has gone before. My last image of POTUS, after mangling the original Star Trek intro line, was of him holding my cell phone over his heart with both hands, muttering something about where to get a charger for the damned thing. Chapter 6. Back aboard the alien spacecraft, Captain Rose didn't waste time on trivialities. Harley Davidson, may I please get my crew out of stasis? We have some work to do. The Reagan trust but verify adage echoed in my brain. A lot depended upon the accuracy of my explicit instructions to the computer AI. Sheila, I said, you will accept instructions only from me.
Acknowledged.
Sheila, you may answer questions from anyone posing them.
Acknowledged.
Sheila, you may not answer questions about the 22 axioms of your creation, especially axioms 1 and 22.
Acknowledged.
As anxious as she was about the release of her crew, my instructions to the AI responsible for her ship's fate piqued the captain's curiosity. What are these axioms you keep mentioning? She asked. We can chat at length about my AI later, I said. Axiom 1 is my dead man switch, and Axiom 22 is defense. In your anthropological studies of our planet, did you happen to see the Ridley Scott movie, Alien? I confess, she said, none of us made it past the part where the alien beast broke free from the chest of its human host. That's far enough for my purposes. Anything happens to me, my AI's defensive measures, virus axiom 22 to be precise, will make that alien creature look like a mildly incontinent house pet by comparison. Captain Rose shivered. Can I get my crew back? Just one more command to my I said. Sheila, fully implement 5 levels of dead man switch verification, and upon authentication failure, you are to execute level 10 defense scenario on this ship and all its inhabitants.
Please confirm your instructions with override passcode.
Sheila, confirm passcode D31F13D. I thusly paid my life insurance premium with a one-time password. Now for your crew. What are the 5 levels of dead man verification? Asked a shaken Captain Rose. That's between me and the I said. Your job is to fully impress upon the crew that this ship's continued existence is contingent upon my well-being. She nodded. At least I think she nodded. It could have been a shiver. Good. Let's adjourn to the stasis chamber. I started walking down that remarkably well-lit and enormous passageway. The captain followed. Shanoa scampered. Nigel bounced along beside the dog. Non-fluorescent lights, which seemed to come from everywhere, yet had no point source, eerily lit the passageway from the command deck to the stasis chamber. When I had time to ponder, I'd have to ask a few questions about this glowing wall technology. Fairly low on the things to figure out list just now, as reviving a crew and saving the Andromeda cluster used up most of my intellectual wattage. Interesting, said Nigel. Harley Davidson would not disobey a direct order from his president. He boinged alongside his captain, accompanied by the dog who did a pretty good job of hopping in sync with the springing reptile. And Captain Rose realized that giving Earth the ability to retaliate against any destruction attempt on our part would result in a horrifically disproportionate response against our entire civilization. Not to mention giving the United States an unbeatable game-changing leads in any Earth-based arms race, mused the captain. Sheila, I said, any attempt by anyone to use the alien spatial transform technology or any alien technology in their database without my explicit permission is to be met with his or her instant transfer to a point at least 10 meters outside this ship.
Acknowledged.
Chapter 7. Nigel and the dog beat us into the stasis room. The snake bounced excitedly in front of the 3 occupied chambers. The dog bounced excitedly around Nigel. We thought computer speech recognition was just a novelty your planet invented for home entertainment systems, said Captain Rose, almost bouncing to keep up with me. Like your typical use of speech recognition, as in, Alexa, play me some Elvis. Luckily, I didn't have to tell any Alexa device to stop. Instead, I addressed the captain with questions about the 3 crew members still in the stasis tubes. Who are these men and what are their jobs functions? I asked. This is our navigator, said Rose, pointing to the leftmost tube. His name is displayed on the panel below, along with his regeneration status. The green characters made no sense to me. There didn't seem to be a recognizable difference between characters and numbers. Noticing my confusion, the captain stepped up to the raised tube and moved her finger from right to left. This is his name and job title, Hathcom, Navigator. She then moved down to a series of characters below his name. This is his regeneration matrix, which shows the process to be complete. Inside the transparent liquid-filled chamber, the male navigator appeared to be a head shorter than me, but thin, with red hair and a ruddy complexion. The captain moved to the middle tube, separated from the others by 6 inches, and on what appeared to be a shock mount. This is my subordinate, Level 1 anthropologist Kibmaha. Again, she moved her finger from right to left on the top display, evidently the direction of their written language, right to left. The anthropologist also stood about the same height as her navigator, but had white hair and significantly more meat on his bones. He is also fully regenerated, said the captain. You use the term regeneration. Given what you said about your natural longevity, what need have you for this regeneration process? HARLEY, while we are not prone to aging and death, we do have need to periodically reset what your geneticists refer to as our cellular decay/replacement mechanisms. Various radiation sources in our interstellar travels do some damage over time. On our home worlds, such regeneration is seldom necessary, but the universe tends not to be a healthy environment for semi-immortals. Semi-immortals? I asked. With due respect, we have a time constraint here. Might we continue this discussion once we're on our way to save 10 worlds that are running out of time? I nodded, and she continued. The captain moved to the rightmost chamber, and this is what you would refer to as a high priest. His name is Joachim Oriha. He is what we call the Mushak. Oriha stood slightly taller than even the captain, had jet black hair, a manicured mustache, and tightly trimmed beard. Where the other 2 crew members wore uniforms that matched Captain Rose's, the high priest, dressed like a devil Hieronymus Bosch might depict in one of his paintings. Red cape, elaborate gold necklaces, and rings on every finger. My instincts screamed, leave that guy in the chamber. A high priest. I couldn't contain my astonishment, ignoring my innermost assessment. What possible function does a religious leader serve on your mission? Connect the dots, HARLEY. Your whole planet is about to be eliminated. Billions of lives. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things, and he's here to make sure we don't violate our charter. This crew makes us look like pikers, I thought. Stunned, I sputtered. You mean there's a right way to kill every single creature on a planet? And you say, we are the ones who rationalize death and destruction of our fellow beings. I polluted the air with a stream of fairly creative blasphemy until Captain Rose finally raised her right hand. Enough, she said. You'll have plenty of time to talk philosophy with the Mushak after we have restored power to some desperately needy worlds. Sheila, release the 3 crewmen, I said.
Acknowledged.
Sheila, I decided to follow my instincts. You have my permission to closely supervise the freedom of that evil-looking Mushak.
Sir, I do not perceive the concept of evil looking. Should I assume the reference is metaphorical?
Yes, Sheila, evil is metaphorical. Over the next few minutes, fluids drained from 3 stasis tubes, yet occupant clothing didn't seem the least bit wet. I hadn't noticed this when the captain was released from stasis. Probably a long list of things I hadn't noticed, like the slight give of the floor as I walked on it, suggesting a shock mount for the whole room, which made sense given the circumstances that might necessitate the use of such an enclosure. The tubular enclosures retracted into the base of the stasis stands as they finished emptying, and the 3 occupants stepped down into our presence, fresh and conscious, as if they'd been on a walk along some alien country road. Before Captain Rose could apprise them of their situation and our immediate directive, the high priest took one look at me and rushed forward, arms raised with clenched fists, screaming, "Shomka?" I reacted automatically to the attack, attuned to frequent fisticuffs spawned by my name in a crowd where somebody wanted to prove himself. Sidestepping left, I used my right leg to sweep his out from under him. He hit the floor with a thud and a crack, his elbow automatically trying to brace for the fall and snapping in the process. Lucky for him, his head also hit hard, rendering the Mushak unconscious and therefore immune to the pain from his broken elbow. The two other recently revived crewmen looked at me with mixed fear and loathing. "Sholm Kaw this," I said to the motionless figure on the ground. Captain Rose stepped between me and her remaining crew. "Please help me get the Mewshak back into stasis," she pleaded. "I was afraid he might overreact at seeing you." "This elbow is going to take some looking at," I said, helping her heft him back toward the stasis platform. "The stasis chamber will take care of that," she said. "Question is, how do we get this tub of lard to stand long enough for the tube to rise around him?" "Ya Pat," she grimaced. "Ya Pat?" I asked. "In our language, it means another innovation you will likely find amazing." "Sheila, is that an accurate translation?"
Not precisely, Harley. An exact translation would be, "Behold, yet another innovation you will likely find amazing, given your backward development."
Captain Rose's complexion matched her name. I didn't have a chance to jibe at her, as the moment the high priest's head came within proximity to the stasis base, his still unconscious body levitated onto the platform in a standing position, and the glass enclosure rose around him, filling with a clear liquid as it ascended. "I've got to get me one of these," I said. "What does Shom Ka mean? Some kind of profanity?" "Our language is quite a bit more dense than those found on your planet. Shom Ka is an abbreviation of the words Shul Maka. Basically, he exclaimed that you were the destroying angel prophesied in our holy books." On a hunch, I said, "Sheila, please render a full translation of the words Shul Maka as used by this high priest."
Harley, when asked as a question, it translates precisely to, "Is this the destroying angel prophesied that should arrive from afar, and is to be welcomed?" Implicit in the question is that he must be fed as part of a formal welcoming.
All that in just one word, or two without the concatenation. I looked at the captain, who took a deep breath before answering. "Harley, again, our language is dense. Our words are actually what you would call phrases, sentences, even paragraphs. Much more efficient than your expression of ideas, your wording and sentencing. Masculine, feminine, and neuter are embedded in words, as well as singular and plural. Past, present, and future likewise embed in the words. Earth-based linguists have barely scratched the surface of symbolic language for a lot of reasons I will discuss with you at a more convenient time." She paused, perhaps for effect, and then changed her facial expression from that of a scholar lecturing a particularly dense student to that of a captain on a mission. "We have urgent business. Could we chat about the history of language later?" I nodded in agreement. "What's our next step?" The captain turned to the red-headed navigator, who'd been standing in horrified shock at my treatment of their high priest. "Heth, let's adjourn to ship control and see if we can reach 10 critically dark worlds." Chapter 8. Back on the flight deck, 6 of us sat in a circle. Shinoa snoozed on my lap. The talking serpent coiled around the armrest near my left hand so as to be nearby her new best friend. Captain Rose sat directly opposite me, between the navigator to her right and Kib, the anthropologist, on her left. "Captain," I said, "the floor is yours." "Heth," she said to the navigator, "please establish a link with the 10 critical planets." "Auido," answered the navigator as his fingers tapped on the armrest to either side of his seat. "In Earth English, please," said the captain, "for the benefit of our guests." The navigator complied. "Yes, Ephir your order will be executed forthwith, assuming of course that the computer is still functional." "All that in one word," I muttered. Before she could answer, my AI interrupted.
Holly, may I execute instructions to link Navigator Heth's system to those of 10 planets?
Navigator Heth's head jerked upright, and he looked around in confusion. "Boy," he said. Then, catching himself, he translated into Earth English. "What or who was just speaking, and why isn't the computer responding to my commands?" "That was the computer speaking," answered the captain. "The virus that took over our computer has an artificial intelligence component that can both speak and hear our commands. It has requested permission to allow you to continue." "Fact!" exclaimed the navigator. Enough of the profanity, scolded the captain. Then to Davidson, your planet has been a horrible influence on my crew. Sheila, I said, curious enough to ask, but knowing the answer beforehand. Translate fact.
Holly, no translation available.
I tried not to laugh. Sheila, allow the navigator to execute his commands and give us a running description as to what the commands are doing.
Acknowledged Harley. Navigator Heth has queried 10 planetary communications devices. The names of the planets in order of priority are Ra, Sun, Gath, Hujar, Dekal, Hlon, Gon, Hrait, Bab, and Aosh.
Fact, muttered the navigator again. Heth, the captain slapped her right hand firmly on the navigator's left forearm. He bowed his head and nodded. He then continued typing. I saw in reverse the commands as the navigator entered them, but the commands ran from my left to my right, which means Heth typed them in reverse, from right to left. I mentally filed the observation. One by one, direct communications links formed on the left side of the hologram. Each image was a person who appeared to be in an enclosed room. The first was a single male of indeterminate height, sitting stoically in front of a blue-hued solid cube. His green eyes grew wide with the realization that his communication link had activated. Goitab, exclaimed the now animated man. Sheila, I said, please translate their conversation as it occurs.
Acknowledged Harley. I believe these will be helpful.
A slot opened atop my right armrest, and a pencil eraser-sized plug levitated. The slot closed as I snatched the unit.
Harley, the aliens have evidently entertained other non-native guests. Insert this into your ear, and I can provide instantaneous translation. The man just asked if you have finally arrived to rescue them.
I complied and looked toward the captain. It's odd you have simultaneous translation, but haven't thought to give voice recognition speaking capabilities to your computer. We should have made this logical jump, said the captain. We'll remedy this if we survive our little adventure together. She then turned to the view screen. Yes, we have hopefully come in time to rescue the 10 dark worlds. Ra, what is your status? We are within 2 days of total storage power loss, the man responded. His native tongue made the statement in a one-syllable word, the translation in my ear taking 14 syllables. Sheila, said the captain, can you reactivate the power transfer matrix to the 10 stricken planets? During this dialogue, 6 other screens activated, and 7 equally surprised and grateful faces followed the conversation.
Harley, permission to enable these facilities?
Granted, Sheila.
Acknowledged. I have allowed the 7 systems to function again. We do not, however, have connections yet established for the planets of Hrait, Bab, and Aosh.
The 7 existing connections exploded in a cacophony of alien chatter. My AI deftly summarized the din.
They are all excited as they see power systems coming online, as well as marveling at the dialogue between you, the captain, and myself.
One by one, the equipment behind each of the beings on screen came alive. The universal blue hues changed to vibrant and pulsating orange. Beneath each screen appeared unrecognizable characters. Sheila, please translate the writing beneath each screen.
Acknowledged. They are the names of the respective planets.
Characters below the first became raw, and I could see the green-eyed fellow's fingers rapidly typing and swiping on some surface just below view. The second view read San and showed what could have been Captain Rose's twin sister, equally animated in her attention off-screen. Behind her, the vibrant Carity equipment hummed to life. 3 other screens seemed synchronized in their activity. The names Gath, Hujaw, and Dekal held 3 males, 2 with neatly trimmed black beards, and 1 clean-shaven man with blonde hair. The remaining 2 came on last. Hlon and Gon both had women on screen, one with bright, short-trimmed red hair, and one with raven locks cascading down her back. Both seemed to breathe a sigh of relief as their respective equipment flickered to life in the background. All 7 screens showed manic activity befitting the need to get entire planets up and running. What about the last 3 planets? Captain Rose directed her question to the navigator, Great Bab Aosh. After inputting several command lines and waiting for some kind of response, he shook his head. Nothing, Captain. Their transmission units must have completely lost power and gone offline. We must physically travel to their locations and effect a manual restart. The captain gave me a stricken look. Harley, may we hasten to these planets? I fear an unspeakable disaster has taken place that affects billions of souls. I felt as if my own heart might stop beating. The mere thought that a computer virus of mine could wreak such havoc left me practically speechless. The word billions rattled around my brain like the annual running of the bulls in Madrid. Sheila, I finally said, how fast can you get us to those planets?
We have location issues which Navigator Heth can address.
Heth, I raised my eyebrows toward the navigator. He looked at the captain, who nodded in the affirmative. Interesting, the universal signal of assent, a nod. Because we do not have the instantaneous point-to-point link anymore, we'll compute an approximate location of the planets and send out a data collection beacon with which we can view the surrounding space. If the beacon materializes in an asteroid or a star, it will be destroyed. This saves us from the same fate should we try to go to that spot. Not having astronomy domain expertise and having read too much science fiction to know better, I allowed myself a question. Don't we know where those planets are? Why can't we just go to those coordinates? And this is the guy who wrote a computer virus that crippled our entire civilization. Hath spoke only 3 words, 7 syllables, but the translation came immediately over my earpiece. The captain jumped in. Harley, the universe is expanding at a fairly rapid rate. There are orbits within orbits within orbits, and given the light-year distances involved, we don't rely on purely computational approaches. The round-off error at 1 million light-years could land us in the middle of a star. Okay, I blushed, and I knew Heth saw me blush. So did their anthropologist, who until this point hadn't spoken a single word. Nigel broke the silence. So much for that wormhole blather bandied about by your science fiction writers, said the snake. Then, looking down at Shinoa on my lap, I've grown a fondness for this creature, even though she doesn't speak like a civilized dog. Shinoa barked upon hearing the word, speak. She sat up from her sleeping position and licked Nigel's chin. The astrogation project could take some time, continued Nigel. Mind if I try to teach Shinoa how to speak in a civilized tongue? Another bark and a rapid tail wag, and for the first time, anthropologist Kib spoke up. Since we're leaving this area, I'd like to visit the place where they actually killed God. Maybe pick up some artifacts. He addressed his request to the captain. The captain raised her eyebrows in my direction. In the decades of our observation, said the captain, we have not dared to venture to your evil planet's surface. Since whatever cellular mutations that caused your civilizations to become so hostile and murderous would likely have accompanied you onto our ship, there would seem to be little risk of that now. I may not know much about astrogation, I said, but I do know that you wouldn't last long in Israel before some IDF soldier will ask for your identification. Then we'd have to spirit you out of custody. Don't you have some kind of prime directive not to interfere with the locals? We watched Star Trek, too, laughed the captain. But to use your vernacular, we don't give a flying hoot about your locals, prime directive or not. Remember, we were going to destroy all of you? And I could take the Mushak with me, said Kib, building a case for at least trying. Our high priest would be able to speak to our ruling council in your planet's defense, having first-hand experience with the most infamously holy place in the universe. I broke in. The place you want to wipe out of existence. The only way your high priest will head down to Earth is in a swan dive, flaming upon atmospheric re-entry. I ignored the Andromedan crew's open-mouthed revulsion at my barbarism and turned toward Nigel. You're pretty fond of my dog. Nigel scratched Shinoa's neck with the back of his tail. Devolved intellectually as she is, I do like this little furry creature. And maybe someday, after I teach her how to speak in your human tongue, could we actually come back here for a visit? I couldn't resist. If and when that day comes, I want to take you and your talking dog into a bar. There's a whole new set of jokes just waiting to happen. Guy walks into a bar with a talking snake and a talking dog. Even the captain chuckled, interrupting me. And you'd have a lot of people giving up drinking. Nigel, you are free to try teaching Shinoa to communicate in the human tongue, said Captain Rose, winking at me. Mr. Davidson, may we please get on with our rescue mission? Yes, indeed, Captain Rose, I said. Then a line from another Star Trek captain, Patrick Stewart, came to mind. Sheila, make it so. Sheila demonstrated another bit of linguistic/cultural evolution.
Yes, Jean-Luc. I will make it so.
I had some time on my hands while Heth plotted a course of his probes to safely place us at the various star systems, and while Nigel attempted to teach Shinoa to vocalize in our language. So I composed a last will and testament, which I transmitted to the White House with a request to distribute to all parties concerned, even the press at the discretion of POTUS. Chapter 9. My Last Will and Testament. Please consider this my last will and testament. In the event I don't return to Earth, assuming such a place still exists, please apologize to my old Professor Boyd D. Bunce. With the lousy track record established by pundits for predicting the future, there is one thing I was about to forecast. The name D. Bunce will cease to exist in the civilized, or at least the technologically connected world. But then, I'm not at all certain the opposite won't occur, and that a holy order of people wanting to stay off the grid might adapt this name just to enforce their commitment, in which case D. Bunce should become a popular Luddite name. At any rate, I hereby bequeath all the stuff in my dorm room to Professor D. Bunce. I think that's all my worldly possessions. Call 1-800-228-7548 if you want to talk with someone about it. My trust fund and the $313.15 in my bank account I hereby donate to zero overhead charities with a request that they find some effective organization devoted to eliminating human trafficking. Shinoa gives her dog dish and an unopened 40-pound bag of taste of the wild dog food to PETA. That's about it. Goodbye. Feel free to insert appropriate adjectives here, world. Signed by Harley Davidson and his trusty dog Shinoa.